Hey guys, so let's talk about typography on the web. And in this video, I want to talk about the 4 ways of dealing with typography and the pros and cons of each. So let's start with the first one. So the first way of dealing with typography is you just repeat whatever classes you need to repeat to style a given component whenever you need to use it. So for example, we have let's go with the eyebrow component, for example. So the eyebrow component is um, this little heading here or text above the heading that kind of labels or gives some keywords related to the content you are about to read. Just like your eyebrow sits above your eye, the eye here being the title, the eyebrow is this thing. So let's see what styles we have for this. So if we go into the eyebrow component, let me open this up real quick. Okay, so we have these styles here. So nothing stops us from. Let me open the eyebrow document real quick. There we go. Okay, so nothing stops us from just putting some P here and then doing this is an eyebrow. And then you just add some class name to it. And then you have to remember to always have this specific set of classes to it, right? And then of course we have our eyebrow there. What's the problem with this? It's pretty obvious, right? It's you can't be consistent with this. You have to remember to always add these classes um, to um, to all the eyebrows. And also, if the designer decides to change the styles of the eyebrow, and of course this applies to any other component, then you're screwed. Then you have everywhere you use this component, you have to update it. So um, this is obviously not a good way of handling typography um, on the web, and then of course you can just extrapolate that to all the other components that all the other typographical components that you have, like the headings and the leads, the paragraphs, whatever. All right, so that's option number one. The problem with this is very inconsistent. Okay, so what's option number two? Oh, and by the way, there's kind of a slight variant to this, which is you can actually um, just take all these utility classes and put them inside a class like this, and then we could just do eyebrow, right? But this violates the principle of utility classes, because now you're back into the bootstrap, um, the old bootstrap days of uh, having your code riddled with component classes. Um, and then we have this class here, and we don't even know, it's completely disconnected from this one here. So what ends up happening in this kind of circumstance where you start to use these non-utility classes is that maybe you're not even using eyebrows anymore, but you're afraid to remove this class because you don't know if it's used anywhere on the website. So you just don't. And the CSS keeps growing. So that's a bad idea, right? It's a slight variant on this. It is still a bad idea. All right, let's keep moving. So what other options do we have here? The other option is to select the typographical components directly. So you could go into the CSS file, right? And you could do something like, okay, Um, well, I guess in the case of the eyebrow, there's really no other option than to do something like that. That's how you target that. But you would have options with like the H1, and then you give that some styles. I'm just accepting whatever auto Copilot is suggesting. And then then you'd have to do the same thing for the lead component, right? So you have you also have this option where you could directly target some HTML elements directly. Some of them are repeated, like the eyebrow. Then you would have the paragraph as well, of course, which is the normal paragraph. Um, so we'd still need these classes, but the problem with this is that the point of a UI library is, or I guess I should say the point of the design system behind a UI library is that the first thing a design system does is a reset or a normalization of the CSS rules. So this makes it so that whenever you are building, um, so like you have a starting point that's the same for all browsers, right? So that's the normalization. And then whenever you build something, you build on top of that. And the point of that is you never have to fight against classes that already exist there. If you do this way, then that defeats the point of normalization, right? So if you do this way, you're essentially adding styles to all the P's, all the paragraphs in your website. And a lot of those paragraphs will be part of components. And those components expect the starting point to be the normalization. So this doesn't work very well because then you'll end up in this place where you're just fighting against styles again, right? So this is a very bad solution, right? So let's not do that. Okay. So if we can't do that, what else can we do? Well, you could use something like Tailwind's typography plugin. Let me show you how that works. It's kind of smart. So essentially, you have a prose class, right? And this prose class will pretty much style anything that's under it. So, for example, if you have an article and just have H1 and a P and a list and whatnot, just because you have that prose class, all of these will automatically be styled, right? And of course, there's when you can't control the content that you're getting, this is an excellent option because you just apply that prose class and everything under that is styled. It works wonderfully. But from a UI library point of view, this is not a good solution because once like if you have so let's say you have this article, right? So all the native elements will be styled, and that means that whatever components you put inside of here, they will also again be in a situation where they will be fighting against styles that the prose class is adding onto those elements. So if there's a component with a P, your paragraph, then that component would have to fight against the styles the prose class is adding. So this is only good when the only thing that you have inside of whatever element has the prose class are pure typographical, native typographical components, but you can't add your own. Right? If you want to add your own, if you want that flexibility, then this is not a good solution because you're back into a place where you're fighting against styles as opposed to just knowing that whatever styles you apply to that component are being applied on top of a normalization, right? Which is what we want. Okay, so this is not a good solution either. So what's the right solution? The right solution is to think about typographical elements just the same way as you think about UI components. And the I've been alluding to this through this entire video. You have basically a baseline, right? That's what the normalization does, and then you have a component that applies structure, styles, and logic. In case of typography, there's not much logic, if at all, if any. So it essentially just applies structure and styles on top of that, right? And that's excellent because on top of that normalization, every time you add a component, whatever styles you set on that, they will work. Now, with UI components in general, that works perfectly, but with typographical components specifically, there's a little bit of an extra thing that needs to happen, which is they interact. So what I mean by that is this. So we have this. I have this page here. So a paragraph on its own, for example. Let's see if I have some good example here. Yeah, okay. So this paragraph here. So there's two paragraphs, right? This paragraph here, it's like has the exact same margin than the previous one, but this paragraph here does not have a top margin. So there's an interaction between the H2 and the paragraph. And there is also an interaction between, where is that? I think this is the H3 and H2, right? So the point here is if there's a paragraph after a heading, the top margin of that paragraph will be 0 because who should control that distance is the heading. Does that make sense? And these interactions happen all over the place between typographical elements, right? So we have those rules encoded here. Let me show you. So typographical elements are here. So whenever you have a class, for example, the H1, any typographical elements that come after the H1, they will have no margin top. But it's not any, it's really only the H2 and the P in the paragraph, right? Anything else doesn't matter because you're not supposed to have an H3 after an H1, right? That would, so that looks weird on purpose, right? Because you don't want that to happen. You should respect the hierarchy. Okay, so if you think about typographical elements just as you think about components, with the added complexity that they have CSS rules regarding the interaction between them, like if one comes after the other, so on and so forth, then typography becomes very easy, right? So let me show you the eyebrow component, for example. So the eyebrow component is just it's just a P, right? Just a paragraph, and it just has the eyebrow class and in it. And if I show you the H1 component, it's pretty much the same thing, just an H1 with the H1 class on it. And the first thing I thought when I looked at this was like, why the hell would I have such a simple component? Like, why the hell would I have a paragraph just to have that eyebrow class on it? Why don't I just like do what I did here? Just give it the eyebrow class. But then if I did that, I'd be back into the old Bootstrap days, and essentially out of the I would be missing out on the benefits of utility classes this way, right? So we want to think about typographical elements just the same way as we think about UI components in general. And there's a big difference, a very meaningful difference between doing this or doing that, right? This is scalable. This is not. This keeps CSS small. This keeps things in the context of utility classes. This does not. So it seems a little bit weird because typographical elements are so simple, but they are the best of both worlds. All right, and with that, here are all the typographical elements on Verve UI. They have been published. You can go to the website. I know this is localhost, but you have everything on the website. You can check it out. Have them there. And let me know what you think. All right. Catch you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.